Let me start out by expressing my pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for organizing this symposium and the forthcoming exhibition. My special thanks go to Fida Toumi, Yazid Asani, Ahmet Yassin, Salim Tamari, Carol Khoury, and everybody else at the Qattan Foundation and Palestine Quarterly. I should also acknowledge my terrific research assistant, whose name is also Zeynep Al-Sadat Azarbagdegan, who cannot be with us today, but her contribution to the research has been enormous. What I'm going to do today is to present some of the ideas we are thinking of integrating into the exhibition. It is therefore very important that you consider this as work in progress and that you give us your generous feedback, as generous and as critical as you can be. I will be dealing with the Ottoman era, and my talk is tentatively, my paper topic is tentatively titled Late Ottoman Visions of Palestine. Late Ottoman official politics displayed a significant shift in attitude toward Palestine. Rather than passively accepting its presence, the new politics claimed it as an indispensable part of the imperial territory. This change in perspective is linked to the broader post-Tanzimat policy that looked to the Arab provinces for political and economic gain in order to make up for the losses faced in the western parts of the empire. The region gained priority for investment, and as witnessed by the increased number of infrastructural, urbanistic, and architectural interventions, it was turned into a prime site for the application of modernization projects. Among the infrastructure projects, railways that would connect all corners of the Ottoman Empire lay at the heart of the post-Tanzimat reforms. To implement the new centralization programs on the broadest scale possible, the provinces had to be fully integrated into an efficient network connected to each other as well as to the capital. I'm showing you on the screen one of the many maps that depict this railroad network. Here we have the lines that are completed, the lines that are under construction, as well as the projected lines. It would take me a long time to explain all of that to you right now. Nonetheless, the map gives you an idea of the kind of cartographic depiction we have. Photography and railway construction, both new technologies, made good companions during the second half of the 19th century. The innumerable photographs of infrastructure projects carried out in the Ottoman Empire reflect this universal coupling. The extensive documentation of the Hijaz Railroad testifies to the privileged space that this project occupied. With the goal of reaching Mecca and Medina, the railroad's main intention was to facilitate pilgrimage. In addition to the north-south line that directly served this purpose, links to the Mediterranean were built to encourage the agricultural development of the area and to facilitate another kind of religious tourism to Palestine, this time for Christians, and you can see all of these lines here, and the main line going down south. Photographs celebrated not only the completed bridges, tunnels, and tracks, but also the construction processes themselves. They were often collected in albums that focused on a particular region at a particular time. An elegantly bound album with Abdülhamid II's Tura, his signature, on the back cover, and most likely produced in 1905 or 1906, was dedicated to two branches of the Hijaz Railroad. The 460-kilometer stretch from Damascus to Man in the north-south direction. This is marked as Damascus here, and Man is number 3 on the map. And then there is the other one, the 161-kilometer segment from Dara to Haifa on the coast. Both of these lines were completed in 1905. The album was conceptualized according to a clear and logical organization. Composed of two sections, it started with the Man line moving southward and then shifted to the Haifa line moving westward from inland to the Mediterranean. So this first, the other one next. Each section of the album depicted through photographs the infrastructure completed and under construction, ending with the terminal point stations. Of the 40 photographs in the album, 9 show the Damascus-Man segment, while 31 are of the Haifa branch. Differences in the geography of the two regions most likely drove the decision about how many images to include. One was more picturesque. The area to the south of Damascus was a relatively flat desert, and it contrasted sharply with the comparatively short distance between Dara and the Mediterranean coast that was defined by mountains, valleys, rivers, cascades, and rich vegetation. Palestine's complex landscape necessitated the construction of bold structures crossing dramatic natural settings. These structures and the landscape itself were also conducive to spectacular views that could be photographed from different angles. A view of the stone sections of the 110-meter-long iron bridge and another one of the same dimensions, both on the Haifa line and both under construction, emphasized the heights of the piers set smartly against the humble scale of the human figures. While these photographs gave some idea of the surrounding landscapes, others presented the projects in their broader context that often dwarfed the monumental interventions. Altitudes enhanced both feelings of domination and power, and giganticism and superhuman grandeur. The effect becomes more pronounced when the observer is challenged to identify the projects in wide-angle views. For example, one caption in the album refers to the 224-meter-long tunnel number 1 at kilometer 104. And I challenge you to find this tunnel on the photograph. Oops, my pointer is not working all of a sudden, which is too bad. But you'll have to look at the right corner, and you see that little dot. That was the tunnel. So it's barely noticeable as a black dot on the left. Only a careful search reveals tiny arches of a bridge that is not even mentioned. That's on the right, very right. Do you see the bridge? Okay. So geography dominates in those photographs. At a time when Ottomans were redefining their imperial domination in the Arab provinces, the camera's ability to record large expanses of land served them well. The dissemination of photographs that captured landscapes from man-made and natural heights confirmed Ottoman possession of these territories. In albums collated according to different narratives, for example, to record a certain path, to provide information about the construction process, or to celebrate the Sultan, photographs of the railway projects reinforced notions of imperial power. Regardless of whether such views were included in popular illustrated periodicals as single shots or as parts of a series, or even if they circulated as single prints, the message was the same. From the empire's center to its provinces to international viewers, these photographs made clear the territorial and political reach of the empire. I'm showing you two photographs reproduced in a very popular illustrated journal in the late 19th century, Servet-i Fünun. Furthermore, imperial power was asserted by the depiction of people crowding the views that the cameras captured. These images conveyed valuable data about social hierarchies and the labor landscape. While the human scenes do not lend themselves to conclusive arguments and remain provocative, teasing the observer's interpretative tendencies, they are useful, nevertheless, for broadening our vision. Inevitably, the man made to pose for the camera impose their long-lasting presence on the scene, triggering thoughts of social dynamics. They are clearly divided into two hierarchical groups. Ottoman officers, identifiable by their European costumes, fezzes, and fancy boots, stand alongside common laborers. I'm really sorry my pointer is not working, but I think you can identify them in the front. The laborers occupy two categories: soldiers of the Ottoman army, who were salaried and whose military service was reduced by 1 year as compensation for this arduous work, and local laborers who were on wages. The Ottoman officers always appear in the forefront. Because the same figures are recognizable in several photographs, they break through the generic category of administrators and overseers and acquire individual identities. Adding to their prominent placement in the photographs, their erect postures exude self-confidence and control of the work being accomplished. In contrast to the relatively few official figures, the laborers in the background are numerous and are often featured in action, albeit choreographed for the shot. They carry stones on their backs, they have axes in their hands, they build walls, and so forth. Here they are shown completing the roof of the station in Man. When they stand still, their location says something about the difficulty of the work they do. Collectively, the photographs declare an imperial claim on Palestine about the control over the land with technology and allude to a social hierarchy. The message of imperial pride is conveyed clearly in one shot in which an officer points his finger to the tracks over the bridge. And I hope you can all see that finger. Documentation by cartography is my next theme. And cartography also served colonial and imperial ideologies well. One scholar states it lucidly for British control over India. As geography and empire are intimately and thoroughly interwoven, he says, knowledge of the territory is determined by geographic representations and most especially by the map. Imperialism and map-making intersect at the most basic level. Both are fundamentally concerned with territory and knowledge. Furthermore, maps say a great deal about imaginations and ideologies. However, their meanings are more associated with those who demarcate them and not necessarily about the landscapes depicted or the people who live there. Their compilation, semiotics, publication, and reception give clues about the imaginations and ideologies behind the production. Recent scholarship on cartography also proposes to examine maps as performances and processes. That is, paying attention to their transformations as they are circulated, used, and interpreted. This means situating and critiquing maps with the complex historical discourses from which they evolved while looking for continuities and changes. Among the examples that relate to the maps of the Ottoman Empire, the Sykes-Picot map of 1916 makes the clearest point. Superimposed on an older map created in 1910 by the Royal Geographic Society, the Sykes-Picot map transformed the earlier one to serve a new purpose by crudely dividing the Arab territories between the French and the British. In turn, the Sykes-Picot map itself became the base for further negotiations, although many other maps followed, proposing other territorial divisions. Late 19th and early 20th century Ottoman maps of the Middle East do not fall outside the general framework of this empire cartography relationship. The construction of the Hijaz Railway provides a good platform on which to investigate a broader systematic attempt by the Ottomans to map the entirety of Palestine. One lithographic map shows the main Hijaz Railway fully constructed from Damascus to Mecca, although the stretch between Medina and Mecca was never built. It also illustrates the district of Jerusalem in an enlarged insert of the Jerusalem-Jaffa line constructed in 1892, that's on the right. The frame includes a large text box in Ottoman Turkish, reading like a guidebook full of practical information for pilgrims making their way to Mecca. This cheap, mass-produced map was part of the larger attempt by the Hamidian state to mobilize and control knowledge of the Hijaz, to mobilize and control knowledge of the Hijaz Railway. It was, in short, propaganda. The current map is connected conceptually to some earlier ones. It does not note the empire's administrative divisions, since it was published by the Navy for the benefit of the public, umumun istifadesi, and it was intended to show, hence, a unified empire. In contrast, an earlier map, published in Arabic in Beirut in 1889, on the left, clearly notes the administrative divisions through lines demarcating the borders and color coding of each province. This map on the left was filed in the archive with an earlier map entitled The Province of Syria, published in Ottoman Turkish in 1880, and that's on the right. The 1889 map shows Jerusalem as a sub-province of Syria rather than an independent district. In the left middle section of the map on the left, we see a division of the coastal region stretching from Saida to Gaza, together with the label, the division of 12 tribes of Israel. Can you see that small inset there? Okay. This section of the map indicated where the 12 tribes would have lived on both sides of the River Jordan and beyond the contemporary Ottoman administrative divisions that separated Palestine into the province of Beirut and the district of Jerusalem. One of these 12 divisions in the area around the port city of Gaza is labeled Al-Filistin, the detail supporting Salim Tamari's argument that the delineation of Palestine in Ottoman cartographic culture corresponded to European designations of the Holy Land. Furthermore, the map on the left emphasizes the fact that the Ottomans not only considered the district of Jerusalem as part of Palestine, but also intentionally divided the larger Palestine into two separate administrative units, with the northern section as the province of Beirut. Palestine division versus its unification was a key component of the debates on how to gain full control over the land and how to resist foreign intervention. These debates occurred at the central and provincial levels between 1872 and World War I. In 1872, the separate province of Jerusalem was first created, then retracted, and finally replaced by the establishment of an independent district of Jerusalem under Mithat Pasha's premiership. Here we observe a clear demonstration of the use of cartographic knowledge and ideas to implement administrative decisions. Two postcards of the region further illustrate the mass dissemination of political agendas by showing Ottoman Empire's new administrative divisions and the significance of the Hijaz Railway to the empire. The first postcard, depicting the province of Beirut on the left, looks like a simplified version of the map of the land of Syria we've just seen. The second, focusing on the district of Jerusalem, on the right, mirrors the mass-produced map of the Hijaz Railway of the same region that we've also seen. The fact that the railways are marked clearly in red in both postcards demonstrates their significance. Like other regions in the Arab provinces, Palestine's newly gained importance was reflected on the maps. Various state institutions mapped Palestine for different purposes. The Navy produced maps of the port cities. The state issued maps of the Hijaz Railroad, and provincial governments and the Hamidian privy purse, Hazine-i Hassa, made maps for tax purposes. Then there were postcards for commercial reasons, but not just. Among these maps, the map of Saida from 1848 roughly identifies the stretch between Ramle and Jaffa as Filistin ülkesi, the land of Palestine, without any boundaries at all. Others convey various types of information about the entire expanse of the Ottoman Empire, from its agricultural lands to crime rates to demographics. Of importance are the demographic maps, which distinguish the population distribution by age only, and I'm sorry I cannot get into the details, it's all labeled on the map here the population in these maps is identified by age only, not according to religious affiliation. While Ottoman surveys collected information about religious affiliation, its visual representation in maps only appeared in the Young Turk period. Of course, I'm dealing with the 10 years between 1908 and 1918. The Charter of the Council of Cartography within the Department of Imperial Cartography, within the Imperial Department of Cartography, established in 1909, had listed as its main goal to produce a map of the entire Ottoman lands. One of its secondary goals called for geographic research from the ethnographic perspective on Ottoman lands. Within this context of Ottoman cartography, Filistin Risalesi is a salient booklet that responded to the parameters set by the department, albeit with a significant delay. Published in 1915 by the Eighth Army, under the tutelage of Mersinli Cemal Pasha, the commander of the Eighth Army, and Ahmet Cemal Pasha, the governor of Syria, it was intended for the use of military forces. Furthermore, the publication was packed with geographical, historical, ethnic, religious, and infrastructural information. For example, the geographic section specified water conditions and the range of agricultural production. The history section combined data on the important events of the past with random references to the Canaanite, Philistine, Hebrew, Babylonian, Arab, and Islamic conquests. Architectural monuments from the various eras and their current states were listed. In addition to major monuments, obviously the Dome of the Rock and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the text referred to less significant remains. Along the way, even vernacular culture was touched upon, such as a 33-meter-deep well from the time of Jesus Christ with waters that purportedly never dried up. The three maps in color at the end charted and summarized the data. The first irtifa haritası, map of heights accompanied with sectional drawings, showed the topography. The second on the left identified the zones where the different ethnic groups lived. The third on the right indicated the roads, railroads, as well as land roads. In remarkable detail, the major settlements featured in the textual discussions of geography and history and were marked on the maps. The complexity of the ethnic structure, which included Syrians, Arabs, the Druze, the Nusayri, Greeks, Armenians, Copts, Shiites, Turks, and Jews, was the focus of the second map. This is quite different from just giving the population breakdown according to age. World War I intensified cartographic focus on the Middle East from all sides. Even before the war, the British had produced many maps that interlace with their religious interest in the Holy Land. But they also demonstrated a growing eye for conquest. For example, the Palestine Exploration Fund made systematic surveys between 1872 and 1877. And increasingly, the British War Office became involved in PEF's work. In a parallel venture, during the war years, the Cartography Department of the Ottoman Army continued to do field work and produce maps of the empire. The activity was particularly vigorous through all of 1917, first starting with Rumeli and Anatolia, then moving to the Gaza war front in May and July. An interesting set of maps charted the daily operations of the Yıldırım Ordusu, Thunderbolt Army Group, named after its abrupt attacks on the British forces on the British forces' trench warfare. An integral part of the military aid provided to the Ottoman Empire, Thunderbolt was headed by German General Erich von Falkenhayn. According to Hüseyin Hüsnü Emir, the Deputy Chief of Staff of the Yildirim Army Group, Thunderbolt Yildirim was organized pursuing German rules with German officers in key position. Its leadership comprised of 65 German officers and 9 Turkish officers, only one of whom was of a high rank. In his detailed account, produced in the war's aftermath, Hüseyin Hüsnü Emir linked the loss of Palestine to this unbalanced command structure and to the fact that the Thunderbolt came to Turkey as German and kept its Germanness to the end. The Turkish army, he added, increasingly distrusted Thunderbolt's German character. Hüseyin Hüsnü Emir's book, Yildirim, offers a detailed and valuable account of the Palestine front. First published in 1921, hence years after the war, well, 3 years, it is a primary source for the Syria-Palestine Front and the Thunderbolt Army Group. At this point, I should say a few things about who this man is. Hüseyin Hüsnü Emir, because he is a very controversial figure, he was very important during World War I as well as during the War of Independence. And then he became very enamored by fascism and by Hitler himself. He even grew a mustache like Hitler. And so his name in Turkish history is not remembered with much love. Nonetheless, he left us this very valuable document that we can use for our purposes. The Thunderbolt collection of maps looks at Palestine from 2 scales, both providing war-related data alongside geographical features. We have large maps, such as the one on the screen, which show the extent of the land, and then there are regional maps which zoom into the details of military operations. The map on the screen is a general map of Palestine, especially striking in its depiction of geographic elements. A random glimpse at the more detailed maps reveals attacks, gains, and defeats, battle by battle. One map, for example, on the left, shows that on March 26, 1917, during the First Gaza battle, the Ottoman troops, represented as circles, used a 3-pointed offense that forced some British groups, represented as black arrows, to retreat. On another map on the right, the success of the Second Gaza battle on April 11, 1917, was tied to the arrival of additional Ottoman troops from Jaffa, indicated in that big arrow that you can clearly see. A map on the left showing the state of the 7th and 8th Armies on October the 8th, 1917, the date of the pitched Beersheba Gaza battle, tells quite a different story. Here, the 8th Army, marked in green arrows, registered a major retreat. A couple of months later, on December 7th to 9th, 1917 again, at the height of the Battle of Jerusalem, the British were at the gates of Jerusalem and moving forward on all fronts on the right. This was the beginning of the end for the Ottoman presence in Palestine, as General Allenby made his ceremonial entry into Jerusalem a couple of days later. The map summarizing the situation on January the 27th, 1918, recorded the final defeat, with Jerusalem and Jaffa now sitting comfortably within the region controlled by the British forces. The Ottoman armies, represented in red, were moving away toward the north. Thunderbolt maps survey the movements of the 7th and 8th armies during 1917 in meticulous detail. But they do something else as well. They also provide a comprehensive record of Palestine from its geographical elements down to its smallest settlements, the smallest villages, all accurately placed in broader context and in their immediate surroundings. It would be fair to argue that the Ottomans had not viewed Palestine with such intimacy before, but only did so now, just as it was slipping out of their grasp. Hüseyin Hüsnü Emir's book, published on the eve of the declaration of the Turkish Republic, sealed an end to an era for good. Thank you.